Hello.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I have to rename this. It's too bad we're Zooming. Here we were live and now we're Zooming.
I know. I was hoping that was a mistake.
Hopefully that will go back to live, to in person.
I would hope so. Brian will know more about that than I would.
Oh.
Good evening, everyone.
Joe? Hey, Callie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in a weird position because I'm charging my lovely device.
That's all right. As long as we can hear you.
Yeah.
Joe, how you doing?
Good, Christian. How are you?
Good. Everybody ready for the snowstorm?
Oof.
What are they saying now? They still saying 18 inches? Has it come down?
That's crazy.
It keeps moving, but the last move was looked like not a good one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's too bad.
I was in Maine last weekend, and it was 14 below zero when I started my car on Saturday to come home, and that was not the wind chill. That was the actual temperature.
Oh my gosh. Where in Maine were you?
Up in Bethel. I went to Sunday River to do a quick snowboard one day with a friend of mine. Long drive for one day. But it was cold.
That is cold.
That used to be easier to do when I was younger.
We lived in Hanover, New Hampshire for 5 years, and it would be 20 below for weeks, not one day, but weeks.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't turn their car off. You go down the main street, and if you went into the bank, you just left your car running because it was a long time ago, you weren't sure your car would start. So you go down Main Street and all these cars, all the exhaust is coming out of these cars.
Oh, wow.
Crazy.
Hey, Megan. Hello.
Hi.
I think we're just waiting on Alicia, right?
Is my background really fuzzy?
It sounds like pouring water or something.
Audio is.
Yeah, I keep getting that. Okay, I'm gonna mute because everyone keeps telling me that. All right.
Okay. Oh, there's Alicia. There she is. Hi, Alicia.
Great. I'm going to turn on the recording. We are already streaming.
All right, I'll call to order the Affordable Housing Collaborative meeting, January 27th, 2022. I guess we'll start with a roll call, and if everybody could just, I guess, go around the room here.
Let me just do it because it's hard to do going around the room on Zoom.
Yes,
So, Liz Carp,
Present.
Callie Babbitt Spears,
Present.
Alicia Johnson,
Present.
Megan Sparks.
Present.
Okay, and Christian Blaney.
Present.
Okay, we also have Joe Murphy from the Planning Department or Planning Board. And I'm Brian Wagner from the Planning Department.
All right, very good. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Everyone got a chance to take a quick read and any changes that anybody's noting at this time?
Mm-mm.
If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Nobody opposed?
I
All right, we approved the minutes from last meeting. Next up on the agenda is the correspondence and public comments. And this is the draft correspondence
Yeah.
to the SK Housing Authority. Review.
And
discuss,
I have to plead guilty on that. I did not get that completed. I will have that done this week, next week at the latest, and we can deal with it at the next meeting. I apologize.
That's okay. We'll pop it over to the next meeting. All right, next item on the agenda is election of officers. We need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary for the coming year. Brian, you're gonna have to refresh me on how the heck we do this because it's been a little while since we've done it. Do we just?
Well, boards handle this one of two ways. We can either take nominations and vote position by position, or you can nominate a slate of officers and vote on the entire slate that way.
Okay.
But we do need either way you go, we need a motion, either our nominations or a slate and a motion and a second.
Okay. I guess first, do I hear a motion for nominations?
If you are interested in a job, feel free to raise your hand and volunteer and nominate yourself. There's nothing that prevents you from doing that.
All right, there's 5 of us in 3 spots, right? I'd be more than happy to continue as chair if you guys would want me to. And what about if I nominate that with Alicia as vice chair and Callie as secretary? That would be a slate.
I'm an awful note taker. I'm just being honest.
I'm honestly not even sure what this for secretary does Callie actually take notes for that? I'm not sure how that works.
In other towns, the secretary is the one keeping the minutes. For some reason in South Kingstown, I get that job. So I've yet to figure out what the secretary's role is. That the EDC doesn't even elect a secretary, so it's up to you.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, we'll just put that slate forward, and we'll keep things. We would keep the secretary role as we have it right now, which I guess is title only, I suppose. Callie, that gets off the hook for having to write anything.
I will say that maybe it makes it simple. Technically, you don't need a staff member here to have a meeting. And at least that way you have a designated secretary if for some reason you need to keep your own minutes.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Do you mind if you could elaborate on what the typical duties of a vice chair are, other than leading the meeting if the chair is not present? Are there any other duties?
What do they say about vice chairs and vice presidents? Your duty is to inquire daily as to the health of the chair. So yes, your job principally is to take over running the meetings if Christian is unable to.
Gotcha.
When I miss my annual July meeting, which I do once a year, you'll chair it for that one. Other than that, I've got pretty good attendance. So anyway, so I present that. Do I hear a motion to approve for that slate
So
Anybody?
moved. So moved.
Okay. Do I need a second? Is that how that works, Brian?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Doesn't look like it. Motion passes. So we'll go forward this year with myself as chair, Alicia as vice chair, and Callie as secretary for 2022.
Ah,
There we
congratulations,
go.
Alicia. No. Okay.
Congrats.
All right, very good. So I guess we're going to roll right into old business, right? And this is sort of, this has been an ongoing one for the last couple of meetings. It's our work program discussion, talk about prioritization, goals for 2022, ongoing discussion, identify issues, goals, and priorities for our Affordable Housing Committee, to focus on for the upcoming year. And I think in the last meeting, we sort of rolled 6A and sort of 8B ended up being sort of the same discussion, an open discussion to discuss affordable housing issues and ideas to address affordable housing concerns in South Kingstown. These might kind of be the same element. The last meeting, we had left the meeting hoping that everybody would have some time to do a little bit of research. And, again, it's the whole idea of trying to see what other towns are doing and seeing who's having successes, if any, reoccurring themes, that sort of stuff. Did anybody have any time to do that? And if anybody wants to speak up, has any ideas or ran across anything interesting, now would be the time.
Yeah, I would like to speak up on a couple of things just because I was doing reading through the housing section of the comprehensive plan a little bit and just thinking about, in my own experience, from and I'm talking from an educational, community outreach perspective. So I've been trying to think of ways that we can utilize our committee to connect with residents in town to and to display information based on whatever we as a committee decide is our priority. So I guess my first question is, because as I was reading through the comprehensive plan in different areas, I have some follow-up questions and just wondering kind of where the town is at in regards to some of the things that I was reading in there. So, and this is more of a question that I'm not too sure what the answer will be, but I was first reading through the land use section, and there was a section that talked about inconsistencies between a couple maps and that the town will pursue rezoning properties and or develop of new zoning districts. And so I was just wondering if that sounds like something that has been happening, or is that just a recommendation, or how does that process work? And does that question I asked make any sense?
No, the question makes a lot of sense. So anytime you roll out an update to the comprehensive plan, one of the things that you do is take a look at where your zoning is and what has actually happened in town since the last comprehensive plan. And you identify areas where what has actually happened is inconsistent with what was in the plan or what was in your existing land use maps. And as part of implementing the new comprehensive plan, you are supposed to make appropriate adjustments. So that's going to be something that the planning department and the planning board look at in terms of whether or not any rezoning is to be recommended or to the town council in terms of correcting those inconsistencies. And largely those inconsistencies look at new things that have happened, not properties that are what we would call existing non-conforming, meaning old uses that are hanging around because they were there before a zoning change happened. We will look at whether there's anything that can be done to nudge those old non-conforming uses into conforming with the existing zoning, but there really isn't a mechanism to force people to do that. If you had a legal use in the zoning change, you're entitled to continue that use that you had.
Gotcha. Do you know if in that review of the inconsistencies, if there would be like a potential for looking at it through like a affordable housing development lens? So like if you do see a part of town or an area has changed compared to the last time there was a comprehensive plan, would that come up in that conversation? Or is it more just looking at like the trend of the development of certain parts of the community?
No, I mean, that's certainly something that could be looked at. Given the affordable housing situation in Southern Rhode Island, it's definitely something that should be looked at. I can say that there are a couple of things going on out there that are going to contribute to that. First of all, the Economic Development Committee actually started a number of years ago on a project to try and get the town to relook at the commercial highway district, which is Old Tower Hill Road, Route 130, and the Route 108 intersection. To see what could be done to incorporate mixed use in the area with residential uses. And there's a lot of reasons to do that. It would allow for the creation of rental housing that would be lower cost. It would bring residents into that district, which would liven it up, give it a different atmosphere. And it would allow for some increased density in the areas of town that are serviced by public transportation and they're easy to access by people. That is, in fact, moving forward on a couple of fronts. The work that we've been doing with Horsley Witten, the last component of that project is supposed to look at, big multi-unit housing projects as along with mixed use. The planning director recently applied for a grant for some funding to look at that particular issue, and not just the Old Tower Hill Road area, but the Old Tower, both the commercial highway and the commercial neighborhood district that's farther down Main Street. So basically the entire strip from the top of Old Tower Hill Road down to the intersection of Main and High Street to look at potential rezoning. And again, a lot of that will be housing and mixed use sort of considerations.
Could we as a committee, you said the Economic Development Committee is heading that conversation, like they're the ones that are leading that?
Well, they've sort of been the ones that are pushing it. If and when Horsley Witten generates any more housing proposals, that will most certainly come here. Even before we get to the multi-unit mixed use question, Horsley Witten is going to be addressing that missing middle component, the smaller multi-units. And I do expect to see something on that maybe within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And that most certainly will come to you, because the money that we use to pay for the Horsley Witten work came through the Affordable Housing Fund. And this group did get to chime in on other components of the work that Horsley Witten has been doing. So that will certainly come here.
Great. Yeah, I was thinking if we could, maybe as like a placeholder for now, that when that conversation is back up and happening, that maybe as a committee, we could draft like a endorsement letter saying like any conversation, like we want affordable housing to be considered in that development conversation. Just something that maybe if we all agree as a committee that they do want to bring that back to the table and talk a little bit about that.
I mean, you'll have more of a role than just drafting an endorsement letter. If Horsley Witten comes through with a plan for making changes to zoning or anything like that, you will have a voice in commenting on those proposed changes, making suggestions to tweak them here and there. So you'll have an active role in whatever's proposed that impacts housing.
Gotcha. Oh, cool. Thank you for that. And then my own.
There was one more thing I wanted to mention along that route, and that is we've heard word in terms of the legislative session that there is a proposal in the legislature to create a prohibition against single family only zoning. This is something that has gained traction in other states, principally out west, to ensure that more affordable forms of housing in terms of duplexes are available, so that you couldn't simply have areas where the only form of housing allowed in a zone is a single family house. Whether or not that'll get any traction in the legislature, I don't know, but it is out there.
Good points, Alicia.
Thank you.
When I was doing my research, I was trying to look at, I like to try and stick in the New England area just to sort of keep examples. And I was trying to find, success stories on affordable housing. And I have to tell you, they're almost impossible to find. and I think what I'm finding is, most of the cities and towns like ours are really about where we are. I found a lot of town comprehensive plans that read a lot like the one we have now. Spoke a lot about things that we need to do and we want to do, and not a lot about implementing them, or if anyone had implemented them yet and can report back on some successes. Because as we know, we have developments in town that are going up. Brian kind of gave us a tally in the last meeting and the meeting before on the affordable units that are coming down the pike here from some of these new developments. So we've got stuff going on. It's just a matter of figuring out the best way to do it. I'm a big fan of simplification, so bear with me. What I looked at was, the essence of the problem is that our town is not going to get any less attractive, right? So that's really the main, one of the biggest reasons for, the demand factor is not going to go away anytime soon, if ever. So you have to look at what are the driving factors that could affect, raising the numbers of affordable units, right? Which is really take out all the noise. That's really what we're here to do, is to figure out ways to raise the number. And if you kind of look at it, it's really three. Liz, are you playing piano right now?
Sorry,
Okay.
that's my phone.
It was actually pretty good too. You can sort of look at it as three prongs. You've got, builders and developers, right, with new development and construction that they're doing. We can figure out ways to incentivize them, additionally or more or whatever, to get more units out of those folks. Then it's existing ownership stock. I don't know how you do it, but that's another possibility of getting existing stock turned into affordable units. And then most of what I saw that had anything to do with any kind of success were really larger, big plans for more public housing and big plans for towns that are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars, which we do not have, at least right now. So it's hard to identify, what those how to go about those individual things. A couple of things that I did see on the developer side, and Joe, you can probably speak to this more than anybody here. I constantly saw, that they're trying to incent developers more to do more units. And I kept seeing, density bonuses, expedited permitting, pre-set plans and specs, and fee waivers or pretty good sized fee reductions. It seemed like that target was all about, ease of application use, ease of use, and additional, bonuses on density when they're doing builds for including affordable units. I don't know too much about how that all works. And Joe, I thought maybe you could just give us a quick overview on, how, is it case by case? I come to you with an 8-unit complex, what's the requirement for the percentage requirement for the affordability? How is that all figured out, or is it simply case by case?
South Kingstown has an inclusionary zoning index, zoning regulation, so that whenever it is above 5, is it 5, Brian, or is it above 5? Whenever there is more than 5 units or lots being created, the developer has to create 20% for affordable housing.
20%.
So if he was proposing a 10-lot subdivision, he would have to create he would get 10 market rate, and then he would get a density bonus of 20%, which would be another 2 units to create affordable housing. So that is what's required by the South Kingstown subdivision regulations. In addition to that, and so that's specific to South Kingstown, although other towns may have or may not have inclusionary zoning. In addition to that, the state has a program, which is the comprehensive permit process, which allows a developer to propose a project via a comprehensive permit. And when they propose it by a comprehensive permit, they get one-stop shopping. They don't have to go to planning and zoning and other boards. They only have to go to one board in the town, which is the planning board. And the planning board can grant both approval of the project as well as any zoning changes that's required. The findings of fact. So whenever a board makes a decision, there's certain findings of fact that they have to find. They have to find that it's let's say conforms to under normal cases, conforms to the zoning regulations, that it will not affect the health and safety of the neighboring properties. The findings of fact for the comprehensive permit is much more in the favor of the developer. It is very difficult for a planning board to turn down a developer that is proposing a comprehensive permit. It would have to be pretty, would have to be significantly impacts the neighbors in the way of safety and health. So in a comprehensive permit, if they do that, the developer has to have 25% affordable. So given the same project, if he had proposed a 10 lot and he wanted to use the comprehensive permit, he'd have to do 25%, which would be 2.5. So he'd have to do 3. And in that case, that would be the density bonus that they get. And we're kind of split, I would say, with the projects that we see from developers. Some being just using the South Kingstown regulations and then have to do the inclusionary and 20%. But more and more, we're seeing developers use the 25% comprehensive permit because of some of the incentives that offers. You see the project behind the police station on Curtis Corner, where that developer is doing the comprehensive permit, and they're putting 32 units, and out of those 32 units, it's 8 of them are affordable housing. So
yeah,
we're seeing more and more of that.
Why would someone not do the comprehensive? Because it sounds like that's clearly the most beneficial for the builder. It's the easiest. What would keep them from doing it?
Well, I think in the past, some of it might have been just not having the information, or depending on the number of units. I mean, affordable housing, the developer, there's a good chance that the developer is going to lose money on those specific houses, right? The developer is still going to make money on the overall project. So the affordable, they developers usually want to keep those numbers to a minimum.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. I mean, that's encouraging, and I mean, in that, those elements that you're speaking of, we've seen in a lot of these things, the town comprehensive plans and the affordable housing plans that were coming up, from Google searches. That's what I was doing. There was something else that came up called shared equity home ownership. And that had a bunch of different forms, but one of the most interesting ones that there were some examples for would be, the town has a piece of land, like let's say the land where Wakefield School is, just for kicks, right? They've got a piece of land, and what they do is basically they develop that land with a certain amount of units on it, partner with a developer, and then the developer sells the houses based on just the cost of the building, right? Essentially, it's treated as leased land. So instead of land value has a lot of the value in a sale. Megan knows this for sure, right? If it's on a leased land and it costs them $200,000 per unit or $250,000 per unit to build, the developer is given a profit margin, and they're really just selling on the cost of construction. Then when the people are buying in, it's a little bit like a condominium, PUD type project, little single family homes. They pay a lease fee. The town maintains control over the land or an LLC or something. That was pretty interesting to me. It sounds extremely complex, but I didn't know if anything had come our way in the past. I mean, I haven't heard of anything since I've been on the committee 4 years, but yeah.
Yeah, what you're describing is sort of the community land trust model, where an entity buys typically they'll start out, they'll do an already developed property. So they'll buy the property outright, and then sell the structure to a buyer at a reduced rate, and they buy the property and get the land on a ground lease, which really reduces the cost, because you're not paying for the land. The ground lease is basically zeroed out, and they're just paying for the structure.
Yeah.
And we do have a small number of properties, 3 or 4 in town, that are held by, I believe it's the Community Housing Land Trust. I think they're based out of Pawtucket.
You might be thinking of, is that the same as the housing network? I know that they oversee some properties that have like.
They're part of the housing network. I'm learning more about this as I continue to dig into and try and update our records on all of the affordable units throughout town. So I actually spent quite a bit of time on that the last couple of days, because I'm not really familiar with that model, and it's been difficult for me to figure out, how those properties are exactly deed restricted, or other than the fact that the property is owned by a particular organization, there doesn't seem to be any restriction in the land records.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if this would be helpful for you, Brian, but I can, on that note, I can from Habitat send you the properties that we have in town. And we actually use that model of a land lease, so that the homeowner does pay like a land lease fee that's part of their mortgage, but we retain ownership of the land. And I believe in the mortgage documents, I don't think we have a separate deed restriction, but I do believe in the documents, there is language there that talks about that piece of it. So I don't know if that would be helpful for you, Brian, in your compiling of data.
Yeah, I'd love to have a talk with you about that, Alicia. And maybe you can educate me a little bit on how exactly that is done in the documents, because I'm
Yeah.
I'm pouring through the land evidence records trying to figure out which documents are the ones that are actually preserving that property for
The needle in
affordable
a
housing.
haystack.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can, we'll chat. I'll email you separately and we can
Okay.
plan a time to discuss that. So no problem there.
But it is an interesting model that doesn't seem to be used an awful lot, and it may be a good way to offset the high cost of land.
Even if, when talking like the direct to consumer model, there was quite a few articles about, towns who are helping people rescue their homes, older person living in a home that they own outright, it's in disrepair, and in return, the town is actually fixing it up, making it, not legal, but well, probably legal in some cases. And then they were converting it to an affordable housing unit. I didn't find an example of that. I found a lot of that mapped out as a plan of something to do. It sounded a lot like the deed purchase plan in a way that we were looking into years ago that we found out wasn't legal. That was just one of the things that was going around. It was the idea of offering literally a cash bonus and a tax break to people for converting their house to deed restriction. There was one town we found that was doing it, and it was in Stowe, Mass. And I ended up contacting them, speaking with their director. They enacted it and realized about a month or two later, or something happened where they found out it just wasn't legal, and they ended up, removing it.
Well, I don't think it wasn't that it was illegal. It was that the state, for whatever reason, was not counting it towards their affordable housing goal, which was the same response that I got when I spoke to our state reps as well.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm misremembering that for sure. But yeah, so it would be interesting to see if in the same circumstance for fixing up a home, or I guess even the shared equity home ownership, it'd be good to find out, like you said, if there's no recorded deed restriction on it, does it even count towards the overall the overall affordable unit? So anyhow, so in trying to just really simplify what we focus on and try to determine what we're going to do, what we can recommend, it's difficult because most of this comes down to, it sounds like we're doing what we can for developers on that side of it. Not really sure how we go about, helping to work with homeowners, as we don't have any funds at this point in time. I guess if we did have funds, that would be something to discuss. I know for years on this board, we've talked about identifying distressed properties and trying to help the homeowners and trying to figure some way to make those affordable. But without funds to do so, or a good amount of funds to do so, it's tough to even try and enact at this point. And then the third part of it, shared equity. I mean, that's much even larger numbers. We're talking about, it's either donated land from the town, or it's pretty decent sized acquisitions of current existing housing stock and then converting it, and then I guess reselling it as affordable. So I felt like I hit a lot of dead ends.
Yeah.
That was the frustrating part.
I don't know, Christian or Brian, I don't know if you know anything further on this either. I know the governor has recently announced in his state of the state meeting that he does want to make significant increases to funding affordable housing initiatives. But I think at this point, it's a matter of obviously getting the entire General Assembly on board with that as well, with future funding. Do you know of any potential funding that would be going to the town level through that? Because I'm thinking, Christian, to your point of home repair, there's the community development block program, which I believe is a program that homeowners can utilize through the town to help with home repairs if they're on a limited or fixed income or a lower income. So I wasn't sure if like programs like that are well funded currently, or if they're not, do we expect to see funding come to the town level to help with things like that?
In terms of CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, it is something that the town has worked with in the past. We did it with the assistance of outside grant administration assistance from Washington County Community Development, which recently discontinued their administrative services for grant support. They basically pulled out of every town they were supporting in southern Rhode Island. So everybody in Washington County is in the same boat right now. We really don't have the staffing at the moment to take all of that grant administration in-house. So this is a discussion I've really I'm pushing up the chain for discussion with the town manager and the planning director as to where we're going to go with this. We've had a couple of other boards ask about grant assistance for projects. One of the things to talk about is whether or not South Kingstown can afford to bring on a position that is either entirely or partially dedicated to grant support, or whether or not South Kingstown, in conjunction with Narragansett and Charlestown or other towns that are in the same position, could jointly fund somebody to work on grant administration for us. The good thing is that, you know, administrative costs are part of every grant. So in some way it's self-funding because you can bill a portion of their time to the grant itself. So it doesn't entirely have to come out of the municipality's pocket. So this is a discussion we need to have long-term, and I'm trying to get it set up because I do get calls about the home repair stuff. At this point, I'm maintaining the existing grants that are out there, but I'm not taking on new grants.
It seems like it'd be worthwhile. I mean, I know nonprofits always have a singular person who handles grants and RFPs and those sorts of things. It's kind of an art form as far as being able to write them effectively, but even researching them and finding the appropriate ones and the appropriate usage. So that's pretty interesting. It's interesting to mention partnering up with other towns.
It's definitely an art form, and the more you do it, the better you know the program, the more grants you can handle, because the better you understand it, the intricacies, and the community development block program, the HUD regulations for that program are very intricate, and knowing what's important, what's not important, is an art. And it's important to have somebody with experience, or have somebody that you're willing to invest in educating them on that learning curve.
Sure. Thoughts, anybody else?
Well, I have a question. So, Christian, to your point about the town sort of donating land to build on, I know I'm new to this, but has anyone approached the town before to ever see if they are willing to do something along those lines?
That's a good question. I mean, the town obviously has the ongoing, public properties that they service. I don't know that they've acquired anything new in a long time or developed anything new. Brian, you could probably answer that better than I can.
I think I'm not aware that there are any properties that the town doesn't have plans for right now. I do think the question of surplus properties presents an interesting opportunity. And I can say that back when there was a plan to relocate the high school, to close the high school and relocate it to Curtis Corner Middle School, the town was actively soliciting developers to come in and look at the high school building. And a lot of the people, we did have people come in and express interest and look at it and look at using it for residential and or mixed use types of projects. When the community voted down moving the high school over to Curtis Corner, that of course went out the window. But the town has also recently decided to say that Wakefield Elementary School is on a short timeline through 2023. Maybe that is another opportunity to look at a surplus property as a potential for housing or mixed use or whatnot. So something this board should definitely think on. Maybe go out, poke around on the internet, look for examples of projects that have done that with former schools. I'm not sure to what extent the Wakefield Elementary School structure itself is viable for conversion, or whether somebody would be more interested in coming in and raising it and using the space. Bear in mind that, the land lease sort of thing that you're talking about might be applicable here, because Wakefield Elementary School and Saugatucket Park sit on a single town-owned lot. That's not two independent lots.
It's interesting. And I mean, this is the type of thing, Brian, where if we came together as a group with, a framework of an idea, that would be probably appropriate for us to put together a letter for the town council to read and think about. But we've got to have a framework of a plan or a framework of some sort of idea along with, and it would help to have it along with a couple of examples for them to sort of think about.
I think one of relevant example, I don't know where it's at in its status, but I know Westerly has something similar where there's the Tower Street School property. And I think there's conversations now over like what that could turn into as far as what we're saying. I think residential is a conversation they're having, or mixed use structures on the Tower Street School property. And like potentially a development that could have 24 units of housing. So I don't know. I think they're literally having conversations about that, the status of what that could be now. So that's definitely a local place that we could start in our research, is seeing, how other towns are dealing with an issue such as like a school space or a space that could be created into housing. So just putting that out.
I can speak to that a little bit. My wife is a teacher in Westerly. And the Tower Street School has been an issue of discussion down there for quite some time, because the building itself is something that really needs to be torn down to the ground in order for that space to be used. It wasn't a particularly good design for New England in the first place. And it's maintenance wise, it's not in good condition at all. But much like the Wakefield Elementary School, the parents have consistently voted down relocating the students from that school to other elementary schools in the town, which has put the school district in Westerly in a difficult position to try and do something with that site.
So the other thing I was thinking is that on some of these lands that the town owns, not necessarily, like there's this one, so I look from real estate, which is great. You can look through the whole town and look at every single parcel and see who owns it very easily and just click and see how much land it is, who owns it, all of that. And the town owns over, what is it, on Asa Pond? Is that how you pronounce that? Asa Pond? Right, so they have tons of acres over there. You know, potentially would they be willing to give up 1 or 2 acres, not necessarily the whole entire plot, but if it was going to go towards affordable housing, would they be open to potentially developing that?
You're on mute, Brian.
Yeah, it depends on what the scoop is with the property. Oh, my GIS didn't open. If the town owns a lot of property around town that is, deed restricted for open space. If the land you're talking about is deed restricted, it's not something that would be developable. But I know that there is land in that area that is used for various uses. I'm not sure whether or not it's something that could be converted to another use. For some reason, I can't get into the GIS system. So it's difficult for me to confirm what's going on over there.
It's definitely an interesting idea. And the Wakefield School one is interesting because I think I'm on my 3rd or 4th round of, they're going to close it. They're not going to close it. They're going to close it. They're going to close it. And the pushback, a lot of it is from the Main Street businesses, which I understand. And it's because of traffic. It's because of they're removing all that traffic. Well, if you put a neighborhood in there, that's a halfway decent concession, especially for the neighborhood businesses. And perhaps they could marry that with, some of the new cluster housing rules and, do a development of smaller homes. That's, part of all the new stuff that the town's been working on. So it's an interesting story. And I think this is something we should definitely continue to look at and continue to research and try and put something together, even if we're just getting a letter over to the town with some ideas. And we can specifically state Wakefield, we can specifically state, Asa Pond area, just as examples of some things that they could start to think about. Because we do know that it is on the minds of the town council. When we had our last joint meeting with them, everybody's concerned about it. So I'm sure they're just looking for any ideas we can help come up with. So
I did finally get the GIS to come up, and the area in and around the pound and the fire district offices and whatnot in there is owned by the town. It's owned government institution. In theory, I guess if you could relocate some of that uses out of there, the town could repurpose it. However, the bulk of the area in and around the pond itself is zoned as open space. So it is likely deed restricted. And one of the reasons it's zoned open space is because it is primarily wetland. So it's not going to be developable even if the deed restrictions weren't there.
right, unless anybody has any other input, I'm going to say I'd like to continue this discussion at the next meeting. We're starting to approach 8, so I do want to move on a little bit so we can hit on some of these other things, if that's acceptable for everybody. So our next item, 6B, is the educational outreach, which is amazing to me that we're back here on Zoom, you know, as we were talking about putting together a some sort of community meeting. And here we are back on Zoom. The education, what's interesting is after the last meeting, there were a couple of really important school committee meetings about the school construction. And after going through all of that with the bond referendum, and you know, the town was on high alert and there was so many people involved, they had a couple of really quiet meetings, and where almost nobody showed up and nobody spoke. And I think what I'm getting at is I'm not sure that putting together in-person educational meetings is going to be, it's going to be a ton of work, and I'm not sure how effective it's going to be. I would submit that I almost think what we need to develop is I don't want to call it a newsletter, but you know, a series of bits and pieces that people can bite off that we put out electronically. I know I hate Facebook, I'm not on it, but I hate to say it, it is the easiest way to get information out to the town. You know, it could almost be like an affordable housing, do you know, and maybe the first one is, do you know you have an affordable housing committee and we need 2 more people, you know, do you know that you have the ability to build an ADU in your property, you know, that sort of thing. Brian, good, sorry.
You need one more person. You had a new member appointed on Monday night at the town council meeting.
That's great news. Oh, wow, excellent. All right. Are you going to wait till the end to throw that out there, or you know, just is that like your?
I was going to wait till staff updates. Yeah.
Well, that's good news. All right, we need one person. But in doing it that way, it gives it some staying power, and it makes it last, and it, you know, gives it the ability to, you know, to share it and push it around a little bit. I'm just throwing that out there. When the town was working on the comprehensive plan, they did a really nice presentational meeting. It was at the new rec center, and I went, and the town council people were there. It was a great photo op. There was maybe 40 or 50 people there, which it was in the tiny room, so it seemed really great. And I swear to God, about 6 months later, it was as if it never happened. You know, suddenly people are reading things about things, and they're going, "I never heard of this before. How come you throwing this on us?" I think when you do those in-person events, you know, they don't have much staying power. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. So I'll stop talking.
I agree with that, Christian. I think, you know, as far as like, how do we deliver the message we want to put out there? I think it's best to do it. It's best to think in a way that's going to be the most impactful, but also received by many folks, because it does take a lot of time, energy, and resources to plan an event. And then if you don't get that turnout that you were hoping for, it's going to make it harder to do another event or have the motivation to do another event. So I really like your idea of doing something electronic, or even just a did you know. I know that obviously at the town level, like having the capacity to do stuff like that isn't necessarily there, or the staffing isn't there. But how does like on the town Facebook page, the Town of South Kingstown, Rhode Island page, is that managed by somebody? Like, if we created those electronic materials, could we have whoever is in charge of that page post that on our behalf, or would we be looking at creating our own page? I don't know how any of that works.
There's also on Facebook a South Kingstown group, which is different than the actual Facebook page, I believe. And it's kind of interesting because little tidbits are thrown out. Like today, somebody was cautioning dog owners about the number of coyotes that are out there now. And people do seem to comment. And I think little sound bites on something like that I don't know how many people read it, but I think that's a really good idea.
Well, I'm thinking if we wrote it, put our heads together and write the copy, or get it something close to it, Brian, we could submit it to whomever at the town to just post it on the town site. Because then you're right, Liz, people will share it, and there's a whole bunch of town sites.
They do.
There's a whole bunch of not town hall sites, I mean, but
Right.
If we get it out on the official town hall site, it'll then hopefully be shared from there and get out
I
into the
think
world.
that's true. And
the
not
idea.
too much information, just,
No.
little bits of interest, I think stands a much better chance than overloading people with information.
Yeah, so this is an interesting tact, and it sort of makes me reflect, back in history, when the people founding the country would communicate through, publications and side bills. I mean, the Federalist Papers are, a famous example of communicating about the intricacies of what they wanted to create in this country. Now, that's way more involved than what you're talking about, but the same basic idea is there. You'd be looking to do something on an electronic level. I agree with Liz. You need to be mindful of, attention spans. You don't want to create something that's so involved that people look at it and go, I'm not going to read all that. So,
Right.
if people wanted to tackle some topics, if people are, good in production and maybe coming up with a little video or something like that that could be posted, I would say have
Whoa.
at it.
Now you're talking video. Now you're getting too complex. Video.
Hey, some people are good at that. I don't know if we have anybody who's played around with things like that.
Maybe we could partner.
If you have a 15-year-old at home, they could probably do it for you. But if you're looking at that, I can make the inquiries with our IT department. Certainly any outward facing media that has the town seal on it is controlled by the town. There are other groups out there, as Liz said, that are coalitions of South Kingstown people that are not managed by the town, that you'd be free to send some stuff out to, but we should agree as a board before anything goes out.
So let's make a task for next week for everybody to try and think of what your top idea would be, and let's try and put together, 3 or 4 pieces. I don't even mind taking a stab at writing copy once we have the ideas. I used to be a copywriter, so we can submit. I'd like to, if we're going to submit it to the town for approval, Brian, I would love to do it, 3 or 4 pieces to say, okay, here's a few of them that can be released, a month apart or something. But let's do that for next meeting. Think about what you'd like to see out there and what you'd like to say and what you'd like the general public to hear, because I think that's great.
Yeah, and again, I think use as a rule of thumb, if you're putting in so much work on it that you're getting tired of it, you're probably writing more than people are going to want to read. Mm-hmm. So, ideas, examples, pictures are really impactful in dealing with things. If you go poke around on the internet and find examples of other things that people have done that you think would work in South Kingstown, those can be some of the most powerful things out there. If you have a powerful story about, people in town who need affordable housing, whether it's low-income people, whether it's children who are, go away to college and want to come back and live here and can't, all of that sort of stuff can help educate people on why this is important for the town.
I mean, it's even simple, a little bit about what the committee does. One post could be simply about the numbers. Did you know our town has X number of affordable units being built over the next 12 to 18 months? Because I think a lot of it, when you talk to people, you hear like, oh, nobody's doing anything about it. Well, we're doing a lot about it. There's a new comprehensive plan. A lot of people don't even know we have a new comprehensive plan. But you're right. Simplicity. There was one, I went and saw a presenter one time, and the best piece of advice that I ever heard for this type of thing was, you think about, and I have a particular aunt that I think about, but you think about a relative or a friend who really is totally tuned out and doesn't have any idea of what's going on. And when you have that topic, you think, if I had 1 minute with that relative and I needed to explain something to him or her, how would I say it? It's the simplest, most direct, shortest way to get the point across. And that's kind of how you do something like this, especially for like a Facebook thing, because we can do unlimited amounts. If it starts running, we can do more than one a month. We can, we can put them out as we want to put them out. And the best part is they'll stick around. So, all right. So sound
Like
good?
an
We'll put
elevator
that on
pitch.
next. Yeah. Elevator pitch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so think about that for next meeting. All right.
Hey, Brian, is there a place where individuals can go to find out affordable housing that is either proposed or currently being built? That's a question that I get. That's what I get often. And I talk about, various developers and different projects going on. But is there a place, or is that something that possibly should be tied to a link with the Affordable Housing Commission on the town's link?
Joe, that's a really interesting question. We do have all of the development information on the planning department website, but I can't think that we do anything to really segregate out the ones that have an affordable housing component. And I should probably sit down with Jay and see if we can do something like that. And we could do something like Jay has done for the planning department page with the development section, focus it on the affordable housing projects and put it on the Affordable Housing Collaboratives webpage.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good if someone could go and, if they were looking for possibly purchasing a LMI house, that they go on and they can see what projects are going, or if they were thinking about trying to rent a place and they met those guidelines, knowing, the different units that are coming available. Not that there's a real lot that's coming available, but there is some, and I think there's some encouragement when people see there's a list of 5 or 6 different things going around town where there's some units coming available.
Yeah, I think
that
that's a
information's
great idea.
valuable.
Yeah.
All right. No new business here. And I think our reoccurring agenda items, section 8, I think these are a little bit redundant from what we've sort of been talking about, unless someone wants to chime in and tell me that I'm wrong. Discussion of the new 21 comprehensive community plan strategies to implement its goals, policies, actions related to affordable housing. That's part of what we're working on for our work program discussion and issue prioritization. And then open forum discussion on, discuss affordable housing issues and ideas to address affordable housing concerns in South Kingstown. I feel like we sort of covered those, unless somebody's got a different idea.
It's sort of been a free-flowing discussion.
Okay. Well, that brings us to update from staff on planning department activities, which Brian already dropped the bombshell on, so let's hear it.
Yeah, I was at the town council meeting on Monday night for other reasons, and they did interview a candidate for the Affordable Housing Collaborative. I believe the last name was Hoagland. And they did vote to appoint him to the committee. I have not received anything from the clerk's office at this point to indicate that he was sworn in. I did keep the attendees list open in case he decided to show up tonight. But as soon as I get the information from the clerk's office, I will reach out to him and circulate his information to everybody else.
Great. That's good news. And any other updates, Brian? No?
No, not really. We don't have any new projects in pertaining with an affordable housing component on them, other than the ones that we've discussed previously.
What's the status of the one that we talked about previously on Main Street?
That came in as a pre-application discussion, but we have not seen any of the subsequent applications for that project.
Okay.
I would suspect that given the cost of construction materials at the moment, that the goal at that project, which was to have a 12-unit housing project where most or all of it was deed restricted affordable, may be difficult to achieve. So it would be understandable if they were sort of dragging their feet on that to see if, the economy comes back and the price of construction materials go down. I know there's been a lot of comments from, people who are already into projects with affordable housing components to them about not being able to afford to build those units on in a way that's anywhere near being able to recover their costs on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was absent because of due to illness, but I recognize a new face on this panel. Megan, hi. Welcome. I'm sure you were introduced last time, but I apologize for my absence.
Oh, no, nice to see you again.
All right, very good. Next meeting is Thursday, the 24th, February 24th. And I guess we'll find out. Is it definitely going to be Zoom as far as we know, or I guess we'll just find out if they
Well, the governor's executive order was effective through February 4th.
Okay.
We have not heard any rumblings about extending that order, although I don't think anybody would be surprised to see it extended for another month. Although the numbers from the latest surge do seem to be on the backside of the hill. But at this moment, it would be in person,
All right.
absent extension of that order.
Good.
All right, very good.
So stay tuned. I will let you know as soon as I hear anything.
Unless anybody has something else, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody want a second? Am I allowed to second, Brian? Can I second?
I can
Sure.
Okay. I think we had 3 seconds. All right. We adjourn officially. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week and play it safe in the snow.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care, everybody.